Welcome, 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 everybody. Welcome to Unlearning today, this June 5th, where we are talking about unlearning barriers to trans joy. We're so happy that you are here. As always, please take a moment and grab your kombucha, your non-fat grande espresso 2-pump, whatever latte, whatever you need to be fully present here. Welcome, Mom. Welcome, MCS. I see some of my favorite people already in the space. Crystal, RM. It's a Wednesday, and it's the first Wednesday of June, and I am so sick of the rain in Seattle, but I've managed to, oh, yes, look at those heart emojis. I've managed to make it here, and I'm so happy that you have made it here as well. We're going to dive right in today because this panel is itching with information, so much that we need to download into you. So I need you to open up your mind, get everything that you need to be cushy and comfortable, because we are going to get right into it. As always, though, we want to remind you of a couple of housekeeping things. Joy says, first, live transcript is going to be running. If you want, you can go down to the bottom of your Zoom screen and find something that says CC, activate those closed captions. You should be able to run those in various languages as well. If you have any trouble figuring out how to turn that on, please, all of the LTHJ Global people in the background, and they will help you. Amy Davis is here to help you. Welcome, Design Unicorn. There you are. Live ASL interpretation. If during the show you hear us, hear me say that we need to pause for a moment, that is because there's been some sort of interruption to our ASL interpretation. And so we're all going to stop talking until the problem gets sorted. That is part of what it means to practice belonging and being in community. We do not want anybody to miss out on this experience. This is your first time joining in on Unlearning, your first time having to adapt your ways of being in order to expand your sense of belonging. Don't worry, you'll get used to it, and it's going to feel so delicious that you're going to want it in every area of your life all the time. You're going to be like, oh, I want to adapt my sense of belonging. Maybe that's just me, but that's how I feel about it. If you haven't read our community guidelines, that was one of them. Please check those out. Although we get into some very difficult, tough, uncomfortable, if we're lucky, conversations, we do have rules about how we engage in that. You will see me as host trying to moderate that feeling, that sense of community. But even in our comments, there are people who are here to follow, to make sure that our community guidelines are being adhered to. So take a moment and read through those if you haven't already. We are recording because why? All of these episodes can be found later on the LTHJ Global website or at the LTHJ Global YouTube page. Unfortunately, not everybody makes it onto the recording. Basically me and all the fantastic panelists and our fantastic ASL interpreters. But if you open up your mic at the end of the show and you have a question, you might also make it onto the recording. Don't worry, you don't need to go fix your hair and your face. Come as you are. At the end, we're going to send out a reflection. We really want you to take a moment to give us some of that feedback. We go through every single survey that has been sent to us over the past 2-3 years that we've been hosting Unlearning. That feedback is really important. It informs the discussions that we have, and we really want to hear from you. As always, ASL interpretation today is provided by our partners at Pro Bono ASL, making the revolution accessible. Please think about bringing ASL interpretation into your events, your online meetings, webinars, etc. You can find their information in the deck that we always send out to you afterwards. Say that LTHJ Global sent you, and they will be happy to help make your Revolution at Work accessible. If you haven't already been to our platform, Sojourn DEI, we invite you to check it out today. We've been working with so many companies that unfortunately before just didn't have the budget for traditional DEI and organizational design consulting. But now with our new platform, small and mid-sized businesses just like yours now have dedicated DEI support at just a touch of a button. God, Amy, that sounded like a commercial. I hope you caught that. That sounded really good. Now, small and mid-sized businesses have dedicated DEI support at just the touch of a button. Oh my God, just capture that and let's turn that into a name. Hey, let's take a deep breath together. Find our way fully here. Take a deep inhale in and deep exhale out. Let's dive in. Take a look at this panel. We're talking about unlearning barriers to trans joy today. Let's meet them. First up, we have Kip Ellis, is the founder and CEO of Trans Joy LLC, a volunteer-run organization dedicated to building resilience in the trans and gender non-conforming community of Kansas City through the power of community connection. Since their first Trans Joy in the Park event in April 2023, Trans Joy has expanded to holding monthly events and virtual programming highlighted by a yearly all-ages summer camp. Am I getting on that? Okay. I can be a counselor. I'd be a great counselor. A nurse by trade, Kip got started in trans advocacy while working as the gender affirming care coordinator and LGBT affirming practices educator for a local clinic. Kip currently works in pediatrics as well as being a public speaker on topics of transness and healthcare. Proud autistic, Kip is working to shape Trans Joy into an organization that supports trans people from all walks of life. Let's give a big hand, a big virtual welcome to Kip Ellis. Hello, how are you?
Hello. Thank you so much for having me. I am very excited to speak on this topic. Obviously, it is very close to my heart, my life. So thank you so much. I do want to apologize ahead of time. I've got a little bit of a cough. So if I am coughing at all, I apologize for that ahead of time. And also my dog doesn't always understand when there's a person here in real life and when there's a person here on the phone. So if she barks, I will try to keep those muted. But she is right under my feet, my little companion. So she's always around too.
Oh, Kip, I think we're living parallel lives today because at any time I may also cough from getting over a cold, and T'Challa and two small humans might come in here asking for some variation of chips or ice cream. So yes, be present fully as yourself. Welcome, Kip. Let's meet Adrienne Marcellus. LCSW has been a therapist for the last 10 years and also specializes in the treatment, education, and diagnosis of ADHD, autism, and OCD. As a queer and non-binary identifying person, they value adding in the educational lens of the LGBTQIA2S+ experience. They love sharing education and information. Please check them out on their Instagram page. You can join me over there to learn more about them, as well as learn from a lived experience therapist about autism, OCD, and ADHD. Adrienne, welcome to the virtual couch. How are you?
Hi, this is Adrienne. Hi, I'm so happy to be here and talk about Trans Joy. Happy Pride, everyone. And this is such a good topic, especially in my world of autism and how much we can mask our gender. It's a whole journey coming into our transness. So thank you for having me.
Okay, let's that's where we will begin. We're gonna go right back to that. Welcome, Adrienne. Let's meet Riley Long. Riley Long is a public speaker and a trans inclusive educator. He raises awareness and fosters inclusion in the LGBT community in various settings such as libraries, banks, schools, and churches. Oh my. He has worked with over 38 organizations since 2019, providing basic and advanced training on trans allyship, as well as consulting on policies and procedures related to LGBT issues. Everybody take Riley's name right now. You know you need them in your organization. Riley is also a special education teacher in the Blue Valley School District, where he supports students with diverse learning needs and abilities. Riley lives in Overland Park, Kansas. I always feel like that's a part of the world I'm like, I don't know that region. And then I always hesitate. I'm like, KS stands for Kansas, right? With his fiance and his two dogs, Winnie and Wesley. What's your fiance's name?
My fiance's name is Brooklyn.
Brooklyn?
Yes.
Okay. All right. We want to make sure that Winnie and Wesley don't, trump Brooklyn. Welcome, Brooklyn. As well.
Fair enough. I guess I could have put her name in there too.
Exactly. I want you
Just
to
like
stay.
everybody else said, sometimes my dogs like to join in on the conversation as well and help with my trainings.
Well, we're dedicated to make sure you still have a fiance at the end of this session. So shout out to Brooklyn. Hey there. Yeah. Riley, are you excited for this topic today or a little bit nervous? Excited, nervous, both?
Always a little bit of both, but I think once we get going, I think it's going to be a really good conversation today.
Yes. Well, let's meet our final guest for today. Excited to welcome Kate Keeley, son's daughter, queer artist and creator, combines her life filled with art and creativity with a career and passion for media content. Some of you might remember RM Burrell, who joined us on the virtual couch, I think at the end of December. That is how I first started following Kate, through their recommendation. She has worked in front of the camera and behind the scenes for 10 years as a creator, starting on YouTube and working in live events as a multitasking jack of all trades technician for cameras, lights, audio, and video, with an often role of directing on the fly. Ooh, that sounds a nightmare. Producing on TikTok and Instagram. Kate discusses topics ranging from her experience as a non-binary trans woman to her journey with mental health, just the joy and humor that is living one's authentic life, and more recently, Kate, to that fucking awesome haircut. Can we talk about it?
Thank you. Yeah, this is Kate.
Oh.
I have very much been loving this hair. I think I have one more video about this, maybe.
Well, I mean, that's how much I'm following along. I was there for the big, hair reveal. I was excited. I was like, now I feel like I should do something with my hair. It's not gonna happen. So I'm living vicariously through you. Let's welcome all of our panelists up onto the virtual couch. I want to go right back to Adrienne. Use some big people words there, talking about barriers to trans joy, when we're talking about barriers to joy as living with OCD, autism, ADHD. How does masking play within that?
This is Adrienne. For me specifically, I think everyone has various degrees of if they mask, if they don't mask. Not everyone who has autism is masking or has the ability to mask. And that can be seen as a privilege to be able to mask. And I want to honor that. And it's also really painful to mask and not even know that you're necessarily doing it. So there's a lot there in itself, but I just have to honor that going into this. But for me personally, and some of the folks that I work with and talk to, I learned how to do, I didn't get the book that everyone got of how to do socializing well. And I had to learn to do it through listening to the rules and watching movies and watching other people. And I learned that this is how you woman, this is how you girl. And I hear, as I've gotten older and moved into my gender identity as non-binary, trans mask, I hear some other trans folks say, like, I always just knew that I wasn't, that I was this person. And I wasn't totally aware of that. I was just completely uncomfortable all the time and I didn't know why. And it wasn't until I really started to go very intense into my unmasking process of being like, wait, I've been doing that because I've been told to, but I feel really icky. It's been a really intense process to get into trans joy because I'm still, but I have been working on having to take out, okay, this is a mask I used to say safe here. This is a rule that I learned and I don't think I like this. And it's just, I don't know, I feel like it's an intense experience and it's something that like you can't necessarily touch or see, but the other autistic trans folks I think can get when we look at each other and we talk about it, like, you know what it means to like mask your gender, right? Like as an autistic person to like try to survive and you don't know it, but you do, but you don't, and you're just fucking uncomfortable. Oh, I swore. Is that okay?
You heard in the right place. Yes.
So anyways, that's my thoughts on that.
This is Pip. I can speak to that also. This is a very nice topic for me. I am also autistic, and I actually had already started having some thoughts when you were doing our warm up at the beginning of this and saying, I want all of you to come exactly as you are and not have to perform. That stuck out to me because as an autistic person, performance is survival, and that's often very true for autistic also very true for trans people as well, that performance can sometimes be survival. Oftentimes, if I were to quote unquote be myself, meaning truly be unmasked as a autistic person and as a trans person, I could possibly lose my job, or be involuntarily hospitalized, depending on the kind of mental state that I'm in. So it's not always safe to be myself, because, and that is kind of being yourself is kind of a complex thing to unpack sometimes as a trans and autistic person, because it's not just about, showing your quirks or like things like that, but more about allowing your stims to come out, allowing your body to move how it wants to move. I did take as much as I could of your statement to heart, though. I've been already you might see that I have been doing this action, bouncing around, moving around. Just being able to have freedom of body is one that I often feel physically restricted, and the physical restriction can be true for as being trans also, with the kind of clothing that you sometimes have to wear in order for your body to present as the gender that you are wanting people to interpret you as. And as an autistic person, I'm constantly thinking about how people are interpreting me, and that very true overlaps with transness as well.
Yes, yes. This is Lindsay. I just want to add to what you said, Kip. In our episode last month, we had two young individuals here who were teaching us a lot about stimming. Can you just say a little bit more about what stimming is in your experience?
Yeah, absolutely. So stimming is release of energy, is the best way that I describe it. It's kind of like sneezing or laughing when you're tickled. Like if someone tickles you, you have the instinct to laugh. If you tell someone to hold in their stims, it's kind of like telling someone to hold in a sneeze. That sneeze is now stuck in your, you could, it's like, man, I wish that I could have let that sneeze out, because now I feel uncomfortable inside. So it's kind of like that, where, and for every autistic person, stims are going to be a little bit different. It just depends on the type of physical sensation that they feel needs to be released. So for me, I tend to wave, flap, plastic, or bounce back and forth, bounce up and down in my chair. I also like pressure is a big one for me. So squeezing, underneath the camera, this is what my hands are doing this whole time. Squeeze, 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 squeeze individual fingers. So it's about a physical sensation, and sometimes a verbal also. There are verbal stims too. So some autistic people, especially people who are low masking, would have like loud vocal stims too. That's pretty common. So it might even be like a repetitive phrase, like anything that it's like you feel the energy inside and then you have to let it out in some kind of way, is what stimming is. My explanation of it. Adrian might have more to say on that.
That I literally am in the comments. I'm like, that is the best way I've ever heard it explained. And it feels so affirming, because I have a hyperactive ADHD too, predominantly hyperactive. And like to sit still is the most exhausting and painful experience. Like for other people, maybe moving around a lot would tire them, but me sitting still, it's exhausting. And stimming also helps us move through situations that it's uncomfortable. It helps us make sense of our situation. So for example, if I'm really excited about something, I'm gonna like clap and make a noise, a verbal stim. If I'm stressed out in a social situation, like if I can't stim some way, like getting through that, my anxiety is gonna be through the roof. I'm gonna have a panic attack. Like I need to be like stimming helps soothe my nervous system and get me through situations. It's how I move stuff through my body when I'm overwhelmed, when I'm dysregulated, to be able to stim and have sensory experiences. Like, it's like what I think, I don't know, do like allistic people, non-autistic people, do allistic people just like have that naturally in their own system? Do they just do it inside? Like, because I can't do it inside. I need to be doing it outside to be okay. I don't know. That's a lot of thought. This is Adrian. I messed up. Sorry. So I meant to say this is Adrian when I begin, so that the sign language interpreter knows to switch over and speak with me.
This is Lindsay. Thank you for that. Thank you for modeling. This is so interesting to me always, because I think in these conversations, and often when I am speaking to audience members later, they're in the moment listening to people share going, oh my God, I've done that my entire life, right? I've always am shaking my foot, or I always am, kind of making small movements, similar when we think about the language around code switching, talking about masking as it pertains to a survival technique in our trans or non-binary movements through the world. In your experience, Kate, is this something that you hear many people, once you share about it, they go, oh, I do that all the time. I just thought that was life.
This is Kate. Are you talking about in the neurodivergent sense, or are you talking about in that of the gender sense with like being trans and whatnot?
Wherever you want to take it.
Because I've seen in both senses of people who have not had a diagnosis for any neurodivergency, having many of the mannerisms of like doing stimming or fidgeting or doing things that would not be seen as being allistic and whatnot, and even that of in a gendered sense of doing things that we perceive in a way that are being something a man or a woman would do, but it's much more liminal androgynous space of so many different things. And there's also just like one of the things I'm thinking about with you saying of like been doing that for years. In the trans community, we reference things that the signs that someone may be trans as egg moments of like the cracking of the egg. The cracking of the egg is the idea that once you realize you're trans or gender non-conforming, you can't go back from that moment, because it's like this resonates so much. You can't go back from masking, from being in a box like that. And sometimes those signs are like, some people have them, some people don't, and is not always indicative of someone being trans or gender nonconforming.
Yeah, this is Lindsay. I'm gonna ask a tough question. Did you have an egg moment, Kate?
This is Kate. I'm not sure, because I spent at least 5 years in denial of being a trans woman, of having so many moments of, I would love to transition, but I'm probably not trans. I would love to be a woman. I would love to do this, but probably not trans. About 5 years of that. So there was no specific egg moment. I can definitely think of seeing one piece of artwork of a woman and just thinking, I would love to look like that. And I did not follow it up with, but I'm probably not trans. So there isn't an exact moment, especially when I've had gender euphoria since like being 10 years old, but not having the language for a long time.
This is Lindsay. Riley, what's gender euphoria?
This is Riley. I was just going to go off of what Kate said, because I feel like I had a very similar experience. Not that I'm super old or anything, but I feel like it wasn't really talked about in the same way that it is now when I was in high school. And there were a lot of things where I felt like I was masculine and this and that, but I didn't really have the words to explain it. Kind of going back to what we were saying, what I talk about in my training is there's really not one right way to be trans. There's not a checklist of, okay, now I know, go online, do those little quizzes like, am I trans or not? Don't do those. You're really the only one that knows how you feel on the inside. So trans people can experience gender dysphoria, which is, of course, uncomfortableness with their body, or the gender euphoria is something where, you just feel really good being yourself. And the presentation that you have. When I was kind of in also like a 5-10 year trying to figure out if I was trans or not, part of my life, I never really felt 100% sure if that was my true identity. What I started to do was I changed my pronouns, I changed my name. I kind of saw how that felt over time. Later on, I accessed medical transition, knowing that this is probably what I want to do, but I'm never really going to know for sure unless I go ahead and just try it out. And try it out sounds a little bit strange, but it's hard to be in this world as a trans person and seeing, what's going to fit and what's not. I'm very happy that I took that first step because never really had any type of regret. But it is definitely a hard process to kind of figure out, and everybody's experience is different.
This is Lindsay. I want to, you're saying we live in this society where people don't even, buy a pair of shoes without walking around fucking store in it. But we assume that when it comes to knowing these inner, deepest parts of me, knowing my gender identity, knowing my sexuality, knowing what my favorite food is, that you're supposed to just you can't try it out. Riley, what are you talking about? You had to go on a journey of self-discovery? No, absolutely not. Wear the shoes around the store, but you're knowing yourself. It's got to be completely binary, that decision. Why is it like that? Why do we make it so difficult to let people go on this journey of self-discovery?
This is Riley. I'm not sure exactly. I think just because there's so much doubt and people so quickly to say that, you're just in a phase, or, you're going to regret this, you want to have that full confidence in it. Back when I started my transition, I recorded videos on YouTube. That's kind of where I got started before TikTok was around, of course. And one of my most popular videos that I still have to this date is where I talk about being uncertain if I was trans or not. And so many people have reached out and said, thank you for letting me have the space to know that it's okay if I don't know exactly who I am or where I'm going. I mean, I work with students, I'm a high school teacher all the time who they feel like they have to have a label. And I'm like, it's going to change. It's okay to be on that journey. My label has changed all the time, whether it's my sexual orientation or my gender identity. But I think there's a lot of fear in whether you're non-binary, you're bisexual, or whatever the label might be, and not being that, binary black and white kind of thing.
Yeah. Lindsay, Kate, I feel like you have something on the tip of your tongue to say.
Yeah, because this is Kate. With you asking where the idea of not giving people the ability to express themselves, to be able to explore those ideas, there are so many different aspects of that, of being in a culture and a society that doesn't like being wrong, doesn't like being wrong, being in a culture and society that emphasizes absolutism. Because even outside of just within that of queerness and whatnot, I know of a cis person who just wanted to change her name from Anna to Anna, and the amount of pushback from her family, we've always known you as Anna, why would you want to change that? Because one Anna just resonates more. And there's also just a level of Western culture and whatnot that has this idea of being immutable, of we build bridges and roads with the landscape's going to stay the same, but rivers move, nature is malleable around it. And we are humans, we are things of nature, we are very mutable. I'm sure many people here who are neurodivergent or queer or even just human beings, interests have changed, identities have changed. We just progress as humans in various ways, and it isn't just one stationary thing from birth.
This is Lindsay. do you think that that is, and this is for anybody, do you think that that is one of the biggest barriers to trans joy, is this need for this binary thinking, this absolutism, this need to find safety in structure, in rigid definitions, in whatever I learned in the church, that is it. There's no gray. What is that?
This is Adrian. I think, like, kind of going off this, a barrier for me accessing trans joy has been as I'm trying things out, right? Because I don't know, like, I think even like cisgender people try things out, like different hairstyles, different expressions of themselves. I don't know, but like obviously gender is different. But the people who have, because I've gotten the argument too, well, you used to do this, you used to be so feminine and you were so pretty, and why would you do this? And I would have never known that. And it feels like being in that liminal space of exploration and figuring it out, those people are watching you like a hawk. And it's like, even though you can like say like, well, you know, screw them, I don't have to take that into account. We all have a primitive part of our brain that needs to belong to community in order to stay alive. That's primitive back in like the caveman days, right? So then even though I can logically know, like, you know, that person saying that to me doesn't matter, and them watching me doesn't matter, I'm going to be on my experience, I'm going to be in my experience, it still is terrifying. And I think that's the point of having trans and queer community, is then you look over here and they're like, yes, you tried this and you didn't like it. Okay. Like, oh, you tried that and you like that, feels true for you. Like that like is so healing. And we need that too. I think it's really important.
Yes.
This is Kip. I wrote down a little note to bring up of kind of all of these things that you guys have been saying, which is that gender euphoria is for everybody and gender affirming care is for everybody. Like, there is a lot of connection between things that we want as trans people, as trans activists, things that we're trying to change about the way that society is. Like you said, it's so rigid and doesn't really allow space for us to exist, or for intersex people to exist. That's a whole other conversation. But like, basically, I always go back to, I remember learning about this theory, and I wish I could remember who like wrote this. I think it was like a feminist writer, but I don't remember. I'm so sorry. But it's called the circus tent theory, where basically if the theory says that the only way to make a bigger tent is to widen the outer parameters of the tent. And the concept is, people think that by reaching what are usually considered the outskirts of society and focusing on improving things for them, that it's going to decrease the amount of resources and support that we have, or waste time. Why do we talk about this when it's such a small group of people, whatever. But in reality, extending out the parameters of our systems actually creates more coverage for everybody who is underneath that tent, not just the people who are on those like outskirts, quote unquote. So, you know, I really feel like the treatment that trans people want, and is basically just the essential things that we need as humans, because allowing people to exist in that liminal space, like you said, where you might not be one thing or the other. I mean, even just physical characteristics, human beings, trans or not, do not exist in these binaries that have been created. And like, even just like a very simple example, when you allow trans women and trans femmes to have facial hair and still have their gender recognized, then oh, guess what? Now cis women who have PCOS and grow facial hair, they are having space for them. Now there's you know, there's many of other reasons why people might have physical characteristics that don't match with the gender that they identify as, whether they're cis or trans. And gender affirming care improves things for everybody. And that is just one, like, again, physical example, but it's the same thing with, you know, like you said, those mental and emotional things, just allowing us space as human beings to change over time and not be the same person all the time. How much better would we be? I'm sure in your work, how much easier would your work be if people were open to changing more, just on a basic level?
Yes, this is Lindsay. I want you all to know you heard her here first, because Kip just gave me permission to stop worrying about the hairs that have been growing on my chin since I became like perimenopausal. So don't ask me like, fuck that. No, because Kip said I don't fucking have to anymore. Out here doing this work. What you're all reminding me of is, I'm sorry, I'm gonna ruin it, but you know is it James Baldwin quote, when we one of the reasons people cling so tightly to their hates is that if they stop, they would have to start looking at themselves, right? And I am reminded of that quote because I think there's something about seeing Kate, seeing Adrian, seeing Kip, seeing Riley out in the world, moving closer to fuller expression, that feels threatening to somebody who their joy feels so out of reach. And if my joy feels out of reach, then I want to steal it from you, Adrian. I saw you open up your mic. What's coming up for you?
I like to think of like sociologically how things have like happened, and like the more we become ourselves and express ourselves, the farther we get from being under control of white supremacy and cishet men. Like that's just a reality. Like I think of like my spouse and I were watching the Salem witch trials, and anyone who was just a little bit different, dead. You know, as soon as you start to act out, you are no longer seen as someone who can be in control. And whether that's verbally being spoken about, or just a subconscious, generational, embedded in our DNA from years and years, forever of, you need to do this. You can't be out of control. You need to be in control. But we don't have, like, there's certain people we don't have to be. You need to be within our control. Now you're scaring me. Because now you could just do anything. What are you going to just do anything now? You're just going to cut off your chest? Yeah. Damn, what are you going to do with that? Like, oh, wow, so weird. What are you going to do without a chest? I think probably feel great. Like, oh, wait, well, now you can just do anything?
Probably not have sweat under my boobs. This is Lindsay.
Actually, you still sweat. You still sweat under there. I don't understand it. I'm like, why is this happening?
This is Lindsay. Show of hands on the call who would definitely have been burned during the Salem witch trials. Yeah, we're all in the right place. Yeah, Kate.
What would you say of like something the Salem witch trials? I missed part of that.
Who would have been burned during the Salem witch trials? Show of hands.
Most definitely. This is Kate. Most definitely. To which I just had to point out one fun side thing of the witch trials and whatnot. It's not fun necessarily. The original witch trials in Europe were entirely started because one guy was upset at his wife, and that's why it started a whole slew of things. Because, yeah, the joys of history.
This is Lindsay. I feel like that tracks. Riley, what was coming up for you?
This is Riley. Now I'm just thinking about the Salem witch trials. What were we talking about before that? I honestly blanked out.
Special interest. Sorry, guys.
I think what I was thinking about is that a lot of times I think people, especially like where I'm from in Kansas, they haven't met a trans person. So they see trans people on the news or in articles, and the way they're presented is not always the best. And I think one thing that I usually use as my strength is when I do my trainings, I talk about being trans as part of my identity, but I'm also just like extremely boring. I work in a suburban school district. I'm a high school teacher. I like to garden. I'm getting married, I have 2 dogs, just I'm relatable because I'm just like anybody else. And I think people do worry that we're open, we're living our lives authentically, what are we going to do with that? And we're just trying to, at least for myself, live like everybody else and have equal access to everyone and, experience joy like everyone else too.
This is Lindsay. I hear what you're saying, and the language is not that I want to gently push back. And I want to say, I don't think you're trying to live it like everybody else because you are trying to be joyful, because you are trying to not do harm, because you are trying to know yourself. I actually think that that is a very revolutionary act within the society that we exist within. And it's not the trans identity, the non-binary identity, the autistic. It is that, in fact, that is so scary and threatening. That you are doing the self-work. That's what I posit. Thoughts, pushback, disagreement?
Kate here. I very much agree with that. Of just something I've realized with transitioning is the most unadulterated, most enthused, the most like titular idea of being yourself, because something we see as being like you're born a man, born a woman, that's all you're going to be for the rest of your life. And being trans is basically rejecting that notion of you're stuck as this for the rest of your life. And I've believed that for so long in my life that I was stuck as a guy and I was going to be unhappy for the rest of my life. And I feel like I'm doing the impossible over here by transitioning, by being able to live as a non-binary woman or anything within that.
Yes. Yes. So is it that, this is Lindsay, there's potentially something about, as opposed to being able to just say, well, that's my lot in life. Oh, I had abusive parents, and so therefore the fact that I throw my hands up with my life and look around me and just want to blame my parents as opposed to moving forward, right? I was born in a certain area and that's my lot in life and blah, blah, blah. There's something about I have to take ownership of my life, of my circumstances, and do that hard work to change that is visible every time you walk down the street. Is that it, Kate? That was a big idea.
That was a big idea. This is Kate, and I'm also trying to think through it because, like, part of my thing over here for myself isn't just having the feeling that being a man was not quite, or as I put it, I'm thinking I was a man, wasn't for me, but it was also, I was very logical, didn't have a lot of emotion and whatnot for so long, so it just seemed like everyone says I'm a man, logically speaking, and all the things they're presenting of what a man is, of like the anatomy, the biology, and whatnot. I must fit that, and then like never having the idea that I could actually do otherwise. As much as I have right now, I'm still picking apart the big idea, but I think I lost it a little bit. But
Yeah, and this is Lindsay. I'm not doing a great job of articulating it. Can anybody, Riley, are you leaning forward? Jump in.
This is Riley. I don't know. I don't know if I had any big ideas either, but I think we're all kind of agreeing that being ourselves and being out there is a wonderful feeling, but it's also a really scary feeling. And there's a lot of people out there who, whether they can't be or whatever it might be, but it puts our community in a very difficult place because of just people that don't understand, I guess.
Yeah, this is Kip. I definitely agree that like being able to like that the experience of transitioning gives trans people an opportunity to discover themselves and find out the joy of discovering yourself in a way that other people might not have the opportunity to be kind of faced with that, if they just, go along with whatever is traditional in their society, whatever's expected in their society, if that fits for them, and they never have that kind of confrontation, they might not have that opportunity to experience that or have that kind of wake up call. And that is like really something that I'm very grateful for. But also like, it's like, I'm not gonna appreciate that so much, and as I'm living in a world that is not made for me, which is very difficult. So it's like, this is all like I would love to live in a world where there were no categories, right? It's like, none of these categories even need to exist at all. They only exist so that we can exert power over each other, right? It's like, these categories were only created so that people in the higher categories could control people in the lower categories. And I feel like if we could, like, it's the same way of being like, oh, well, if we just didn't have any of, like, if we just didn't see the categories, then it would fix the problem. It's like, the categories are still going to be there and still exist. So like, the reality of, living as a trans person in a world that is not built for you, I feel like is more of a barrier to trans joy than just the journey of self-discovery itself. Like, you can't even sometimes go on that journey of self-discovery because there are so many barriers trying to keep you from it.
Yeah. Yeah. This is
This is-
Lindsay.
oh.
Go ahead, Adrian.
I was just gonna say, this feels relative. I don't know. Everything feels relative when I have ADHD and it all flows together. I think my biggest barrier to trans joy is internalized transphobia from growing up in the 90s and like absorbing everything that was being said and seeing how, family members or friends would look at the people who were brave and out in our community and hearing what was on TV, like all that absorbed into my subconscious, this subcortical part of my brain and my body. And I think thinking about a society that isn't built for us, going off of what Kip said, like it's hard to like get that shit out. It's like so ingrained in us. Well, in me, I'll speak for myself, and like what a barrier to be working through it internally and then externally, right? You're still seeing that stuff on TV. So it is such an incredibly brave and revolutionary act to be like, well, and sometimes it's like, we can't survive anymore not doing it. Like I couldn't survive anymore. I wasn't okay. I like couldn't leave the house. But like to just be like, all right, I have all this shit inside of me saying this and all these people out here saying this, but I have this beautiful little group of queer community where like, I have to do this or I'm not going to survive it. I don't know. I just think we're cool people.
This is Kip. Yeah, I feel like I thought of one more piece of that thought that I had just said, which is that I also feel like the only reason we have to discover ourselves is because we were forced to be someone else for a really long time. If I was just allowed to be how I was my whole life, if I never had to do all of that other stuff, there would have been no discovery in the first place. So like, I'm trying to live in a world where trans people don't have to discover themselves because they can just be themselves the whole time and never have to go through that process. Obviously, there is differences for people who, like, it's different for me or for other people who, based off if you do or don't want medical assistive, therapies. So still deciding that you want to get surgeries and all of that kind of stuff, that would of course always still be a process. Deciding that you want to go on hormones, that would all be a process, but it would be the same process as it is for anyone else, like a cis woman who wants to get a breast augmentation. That is a journey of self-discovery, and it doesn't have to be one that is causes your entire life to be turned upside down. You don't have to worry about losing your job, losing your housing, losing your family, losing your partners. I mean, maybe you do, depending on if you've got some really conservative family who doesn't think you should be getting a breast augmentation. But like, you know, again, I just, yeah, that was the consensus of my thought earlier, that the journey of self-discovery in itself only exists mostly, to me, I feel, because of the amount of repression that you have to do, to where you've got to dig in there and find the stuff because it's under other stuff you've been putting in there for so long.
This is Adrian. I have a 2-year-old, my spouse and I have a 2-year-old, and I think I sit back when we watch him and we're just like, what's it going to be like to just be allowed to like what you like and not have a gender label on it? Like, oh, you want your nails painted, you want trucks, you want mermaids, there's no gender, it's just, it is. That's just what you like. Oh, you want to have your hair like that? Oh, you want to wear this today? Those are just simply clothes. And like, oh, what's going to be like? I think about that. So I love that you said that, kid.
This is Lindsay. To all of you, and expanding on what you said, Kip, would you all like to live in a world where trans individuals didn't have to go on a journey of self-discovery, or where it was expected that every individual in the world had to go on their own journey of self-discovery and be supported in that journey?
This is Kate. Very much the second, because one, trans people, until a trans person knows they're trans, they still think they're cis. And so and also the idea of people being man or woman or whatnot is such a thin line of the difference between of that with androgyny and other things. I'm bouncing all around here. But yeah, it's allowing anyone to be able to journey and find their expression. I think it would be needed for everyone, and I think would be needed baseline for trans people to experience it, because you don't know you're trans until you start exploring. And if it's just to trans people, but you don't see yourself as trans, how do you get access to that journey? And there are plenty of cis people who want to go on that journey, and at the end, they're still cis because they had that journey. They realized what they wanted, of either being more, some masculine folks being more feminine. Maybe they go non-binary. Maybe they still stay as a binary label or category of man or woman, but can at least express further along than what they thought they were allowed to before, of having tomboys and femboys. Second one's a little complicated label-wise, but the point is there.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is Riley. I just want to add to that I think it's less about maybe the self-discovery and it's more the coming out process, because I think the self-discovery is definitely difficult, but depending on who's in your life, and I think, kind of creating a space, kind of what Kip had said, that you don't have to really come out. You can just be yourself from the very beginning. And, you're allowed to exist in any space. And you don't have that fear of, am I going to still have my family members after that? Am I still going to have my job? That kind of thing is what we're all trying to work towards, is just being able to say, this is who I am. And then you're just, they're like, oh, okay, no big deal. That kind of reaction.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is Kip. Yeah, I do think that it would be good to live in a world where everybody had to go on a journey of self-discovery, for everybody to be able to feel more assured in themselves. And then also then we wouldn't have, no one would be able to, argue about each other's identities and stuff, because it's like, I feel like something that I get asked a lot is if I think that being trans is trendy. and if like more kids are becoming trans just because it's a trend. And it's like, first of all, no, but that's a whole other conversation. But like, we wouldn't even be having that question if we all knew, we all genuinely picked this because we all genuinely are living our lives because we've looked inside of ourselves and found that this is the thing that makes us the most happy, is if I do this. And that would be a way better way for everybody to be living their lives, I think. And then, the coming out process, like Riley was talking about, would be a lot easier too, because, we can just tell each other updates about ourselves. It's like, hey, I am gonna start going by this name now. I don't like this band anymore. I don't want to be in this profession anymore. I want to change I don't know. Yeah, I think, like you said, the second option where everybody could be whoever they wanted to be, obviously that's like, would be a really wonderful world.
What a wonderful world. Yes, this is Lindsay. To your point, Kip, if you're asking me, do I think it's a problem that teenagers are trending towards figuring themselves out in their own journey of self-discovery? I'm not mad at it. And let me get on that trend wagon fast. I'm getting the message that it's time to open it up for some Q&A and stop hogging you to myself, which I would continue to do for the next 15 minutes. If you could drop your questions in the chat window for me, if you want me to read it aloud, or you're welcome to open up your mic and ask your question directly to Kate, Adrian, Kip, or Riley.
This is Adrian real quick. I drink a lot of tea. I'm going to be right back.
Thank you, T.
No question.
I drink a lot of tea too. What questions do we have for our panel? I've got a question here. It says, I am feeling a little bit stuck and isolated, and joy feels like something that is very far off from my life. How might I begin the process of finding joy?
This is Kip. I guess I would want to know, I don't know if it's possible to or appropriate to ask this person. Are they asking this as a trans person, specifically looking for trans joy, or just in general of life, how to find more joy in their life?
I'm reading it thinking that this is a trans individual asking specifically for guidance from your journeys.
Yeah, okay. This is still Kip. It's something that we think about a lot with my organization, Trans Joy, because there are a lot of people in the trans community, unfortunately, who are very isolated, especially in areas like Kansas City, and even like Seattle is this way too, where it's like there's a dense population of trans people, queer people, open businesses, flags, pride flags in the central city area. But then as you move out into like just an hour away out from the city center, you might be in a very isolated area where you might not see many representations visually, and might have to be more, online focused too, of finding community there. So being online is kind of, I feel like, a key tool for trans people who are feeling isolated. But I highly encourage for it to just be the first step in finding people, using social media or other, like, honestly, even dating apps. That sounds crazy, but like, if you find other trans people through the internet, then take the step to hang out with them in real life, in person. Not that the internet isn't real, but because things on there can have very real impacts. But having that in-person community, oh yes, Discord is good too. That's a really great one. The trans people love Discord. It's, and so then moving that into a space where you're able to physically be around other trans people. And there can be barriers to that too, like transportation, health status. A lot of people who are immunocompromised, can't be around other people in person. But there are other people out there who are feeling the exact same way as you. I think that's something that a lot of times when you start feeling isolated and you start feeling alone, you start feeling like you're the only one. That's part of being isolated, is feeling like you are alone in that you're the only one who is feeling this way. But there are lots of other trans people out there who are feeling the same way as you and looking for that connection. So my biggest advice would be to be brave and be the person who reaches out to the other person and says, I'm feeling lonely too. Why don't we do something about that? And once you start with just one other person out there who feels the same way as you do, then you don't feel so alone anymore, and it can continue to snowball from there.
This is Lindsay. Riley, can you speak to that, or how you coach youth?
This is Riley. I mean, I was just nodding my head with Kip because I agree. I think, one of the things that really helped me was, beyond being online, is going to support groups or different events and meeting people, because then I was really able to relate to others and what they might be going through, because you can really feel alone, especially if you are in an area or you work somewhere like that, just there's not a lot of like-minded maybe individuals. So being able to find those spaces, I think, is key. And really leaning on those people when you need them, whether you're going to come out or you're doing something difficult, having a few friends that you can call or meet up with afterwards to just help cheer you up or whatever you need for that day, is really the thing that I've found to be the most helpful. And some of the closest friends I've had are people I met at kind of the beginning of my journey.
Other questions? Allowing a moment to open up your mic and speak directly to these. I understand that they are intellectually scary, but very kind individuals. I want to take a moment and thank everybody, as always, for being here, and particularly Kate, Adrienne, Kip, and Riley. Thank you so much for coming to share, to teach, to shepherd on our journey. Hopefully, everybody notices that one of the things I was very careful not to do here, as somebody who exists in the world as Black, is to make it sound as though it was my fault, the experience that I have been having as a Black individual in this society. So while we were talking about how do we share, expand, experience trans joy in this space together, we wanted to very much make sure that the story was not that the threat to trans joy was a problem that trans joy, or that trans people have been exacerbating. The threat to trans joy is external, it is systemic, it is structural, it is other people's fear. not the individuals in this room who are guiding lights of what it is to embrace joy as a liberatory act. And so Kate, Adrian, Kip, Riley, thank you for being the examples of what it is to go through, to do the work, to self-interrogate, to move towards love and joy as a liberatory action. We are not fucking around here, people. We've watched over the past couple of years as attacks on our trans community have been weaponized as a political resource, as a way to shift the conversation, smoke and mirrors, away from very real problems in very disenfranchised communities that are watching their industries disappear, watching as their money is being taken and used for all sorts of tomfoolery. And we found a target. It's the same playbook we've been playing since the inception of this society. Don't look at the actual big problem over here. Let's blame this small group over here and make them the big scary monster in the corner. Be open to listening to other people and the lies that they have been told, and try to understand the underlying fear that it is at the root that would make them choose such a simple monster to fix upon. That person is hurting. If they can be so easily sold on the hate of another, that's a sign that that person is deeply hurting. And that's the story that I want you to focus on. How can you find the locus of their pain, hold them, midwife them, love them, which is the liberatory action, not punitive, but to choose love, love them towards their own version of joy and self-actualization. That's the lesson that we take away from here. Choose joy, choose love, choose to follow these 4 individuals on social media. I'll have to be cool and try to get TikTok. I'm afraid of it because it's like all the cool kids are on it. I'm not that cool, but okay. To follow some of you, I'll get to TikTok. That's what Riley said. Riley said I gotta follow him on TikTok. Okay, fine. I'll follow you on TikTok. Thank you for being here. I adore you. I love you. We'll see you next month. Goodbye.